if I have a phone. I have it somewhere. Give me a number.
Call to order the school committee meeting for February 25th. Please rise for the pledge. I'm sorry.
That's
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We are going to start today with our student representative, Mr. Potter. Welcome.
So this past couple weeks has been the 56th annual, I believe,
56th Science
annual
Fair.
Science Fair. And all the projects were fantastic, and a couple are going to, people are going to the state level tournament.
Bridgewater State College.
I don't actually know where it's being held, but I know a couple are going to present their project at the state level. Also, I don't remember his name. The wrestler. There's been a wrestler who's made
His
it
name
to.
is Frank Girolamo.
And is he number one in the
He
state?
was number
now?
one in Division II
For the state.
for the state.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
impressive.
congratulations to
Yeah,
Frank.
yeah, I saw that on Facebook too. It was awesome.
Yeah, so that's exciting for him. Winter sports actually have recently just ended, but the girls' varsity basketball team is playing their first playoff game,
First
I believe,
playoff game.
in Westwood. So good luck to them. And then also spring sports will be starting up soon, so it's another thing to be looking forward to. And then for class updates, I don't really know about what's happening in the other classes. Well, my friend Leslie's not here, but I know in the sophomore class that there will be a 3-on-3 basketball tournament being held Friday, March 14th. And it is supposed to be a very big fundraiser. It's being held 3:30 to about, thinking about 6. We're not, depending on how many teams we see sign up, is going to depend on how late we're going to be staying, but it's going to be a very big fundraiser. We're going to title it March Madness. and
Excellent.
We're very excited for it.
And that is the class fundraiser?
It's a class fundraiser.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Is that at the middle school?
It's held at the middle school, and we're also having 2 distinct tournaments, one for the middle school and one for the high school, so that 6th graders aren't playing 12th graders. To keep it
Wise.
fair.
Excellent. Anything else happening?
Not
Yeah.
that I can think of right now.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda, we have public comment. And Mr. Soares, I see that you've signed up, and it says that I owe you the reason to stop you from talking during the public comment period. I apologize. I received an email from Dr. Urel today just as I was going into a full day of training. Have not had a chance to pull up the support information for that. I did ask, and I will state it again, I did ask our attorney one point when she was here for negotiations, because I was concerned that allowing people who are candidates for office to speak during what is essentially free airtime would obligate us to provide equal time to the candidates who are currently on the committee, and our public comment policy does not allow for our people to respond. She said that as soon as a person is perceived to be a candidate, that in fact she agreed that it was our choice, not necessarily the law, but our choice to restrict that. It has not happened in the past where we've had a public comment period and have had candidates do it. Take advantage of that opportunity. And I believe that you all have plenty of opportunities coming up for public discourse, and I would like to stick with that. We will be discussing public comment on today's agenda as one of the policies. So I would like to reserve the right to keep with the policy that I had and the opinion that I got from the attorney. I will dig out the conversation I had with her so that both you, Dr. Urel, and Mr. Soares can see it. And if we need to have a written one from her, like I said, it was during a conversation, I can get that as well.
That will be fine, but so does that also preclude from George and Deborah from speaking?
No, they're
at the
here to
school
speak.
committee
They're
meeting?
here to speak on the business that's on the agenda, not during the public comment period.
But other people will also be talking about.
They are
not
elected
about the,
officials
not
here to
about
speak
the,
about the agenda. I don't see that that is free airtime.
It's not free airtime. It's just as the policy states. It's the purpose of that is let people speak about the issues that
We'll-
pertain to school committee.
We will discuss it during the discussion on the public comment
Okay.
policy. Thank you. Dr. Rizzi.
Next on the agenda is Mr. Harding to talk about the acceptance of the regular day transportation bid. As you know, our bus contracts tend to be 3 years, and we went out to bid for one. And we had a bidder, didn't we? So Mr. Harding will talk a little bit about the process and the recommendation we have for accepting the transportation bid.
Good evening. I think you do have a recommendation for you for accepting the bid of First Student. We did put our regular day transportation. This is transportation for, excuse me, our regular day students as well as our ELL and in-town sped. This 11 vehicles. This is actually up 2 vehicles from last year because we are taking our 2 vehicles out of service.
We are.
Stoughton Public Schools had 2 vehicles, well, still does. They're still in service until the end of the year. One is a 2001 Freightliner, the other one is a 2004 Thomas. So they will have both been in service for over 10 years. So we asked this time around that everybody bid on all 11 vehicles. The bid has always included 11 drivers
Okay.
of our 2 vehicles, for our 2 vehicles. So there is that there. The fleet will be upgraded. We will have, I'm not saying new vehicles, but we will have newer vehicles than we've had them for the last 6 years. We included, not as part of the bid, but as informational costs for late buses for the first time for the elementaries as well as the secondary. So we do have those costs. There is some negotiations that will have to take place depending on how we're going to schedule the late bus. If the late buses overlap either of the secondary or the elementary runs, it's going to cost us more money than if we can piggyback them on the end
Okay.
with our existing buses. The 11 vehicles, again, is no change. We've used 11 vehicles for the last nine years or so since the change at the Jones. Our vehicles do both elementary and secondary. So they go out, for instance, in the morning, they will do the secondary runs. Once they're finished with the secondary runs, they return and go and do elementary runs and reverse in the afternoon. So First Student was our only bidder, not unexpectedly. First Student is a union shop. None of the other transportation companies in the area are union. So it's not unexpected that First was the only bidder.
Are they our current?
They are our current, they've been our vendor for about 12 years.
Okay.
12 years.
We're satisfied with their
Yes.
level of service. Does anybody have questions?
was my question.
Okay. Anybody have questions? Mr. Zielinski?
Yes, and looking at this packet that we sent, Exhibit A, which is like the 3rd page down, Joel, says special power of attorney. I notice all the dates on here were all expired. Is that something that...
That's something that we'll, once the contract is signed, we'll get new documents from them, yes.
Okay, because I know,
Yeah.
because 2012 or whatever.
Yeah.
The other thing is, my typical question, prevailing wage for these bus drivers?
It is, unfortunately.
Okay. And what has been the practice in the past as to timeliness, missed routes, late buses, et cetera? When I say late buses picking up the kids when they're supposed to, have we had the problems?
We
that
have not
they've
had the
in other
problem.
areas?
No, we have not had those problems. Our fleet is small enough so that really the only thing that causes us problems, for instance, we had some issues at the beginning of this week due to Central Street being closed. We were rerouted around, so we had some issues there. Weather occasionally plays havoc with our routes, and traffic occasionally does, especially if there's incidents on, for instance, 24, and people are getting off 24 and coming through Stoughton. We do have a little traffic. For the most part, they're very, very good as far as their timing goes.
Okay, the last question, if I may, please. Are each of the drivers quarried?
They're quarried every 3 years. Every time we do a new contract, each driver has to be quarried. If there's a new driver brought on, they have to be quarried before they're allowed to drive a bus.
If I may just step on what you just said, quarries every 3 years?
Every 3 years.
Is there a way of insisting that the quarries be done every year? I'm not, I'll take,
That's by law, is 3 years. So
I think that's what we do with the teachers too, right?
I think that is, personally, I think
for
that is
staff.
not the right thing to do. Somebody committing a chargeable offense,
I can ask, I can request it, but I don't think they have to provide it because the law says 3 years.
I understand that, but I mean, I'm a little concerned because
They're all the same.
Quarries.
These drivers, you have to understand that that people that have been driving these buses have been driving these buses since we started. We have people that have, and I understand too that that doesn't mean that they can't get into trouble and have issues. And I, as I say, I will ask, but if they, and some of them may say yes, some of them may, if they refuse, there's not really any recourse we have.
past experience is that the quarry form on the report of the quarry form is only good on up to the date that it gets reported on. Something happened after that date, especially the quarry forms, unless it's going national or interstate, which I don't think it is at this point, even though Mr. Representative Kafka said they were working on something on that. Something happened in Rhode Island, we don't know about it unless there's a different method that is used by the school departments or whatever.
No, we quarry them ourselves. We ask for them to provide the quarries, and Dr. Rizzi does the quarry report. And there's also very many restrictions on being a bus driver and holding your bus driver's license. I mean, there's many restrictions as far as alcohol related offenses, drug related offenses, many things that trigger issues where the drivers have to be removed from the buses.
Because I'm just primarily concerned about the safety of the kids on the buses and making sure that the people that are handling the buses are the ones that we actually want. We've had experience with this company for years. I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm very concerned about the quarry aspect. That's my opinion.
I can definitely ask and see what their feeling is. They may not have a problem with it. It again is first student may have a corporate policy. I know they do as far as drug testing, random drug testing. Everyone is randomly drug tested at least twice a year. If they don't have a problem with it, obviously I don't.
Okay.
Dr. Earl?
Excellent questions, George. Thank you. Thank you for coming here, Mr. Harding. I had a few questions.
Very difficult, but at times, but I manage.
I just couldn't understand that. I think you implied something. The 10 companies requested bid package, but First Student was the only company to submit a bid. So does it have to do with them being the only union company?
Yes.
So we are requesting a union company?
We request prevailing wage, and the only union company that provides the prevailing wage is First Student. So every other company would have to match their salaries.
And we have to require a prevailing wage. But other towns use other bus companies. How do they do that?
Other towns, when they request the prevailing wage office calls the bus companies that service the area and provides a prevailing wage to them.
So even if they are not union, we could still be providing them prevailing wage.
They have to provide a prevailing wage, correct?
So we didn't ask them to be a union, we asked them to be prevailing wage.
We ask the state for the prevailing wage. The state then goes to the company in the area, which is First Student, who is a union company, gets their wage contract and determines a prevailing wage from that.
Okay. Okay, and then I was looking at the rates. So I see, I don't know which page it is. Let me tell the school committee members. Yeah, I know where it is, but I just wanted to tell the other guys where I am. 2, 3, 4, 5th page, so that's page 9. 5th page, it says total cost for regular school transportation. And then on the next page, we have the added additional cost. So that's what my question is. Now we are talking about roughly $600,000 a year.
That's what you're voting on, yes.
That's only for the 11 buses.
Correct.
And then if we do, I'm hoping we will do the evening late bus, then it will be $200 per bus extra.
No, as I just explained. $200 a bus is if we overlap. If we overlap our secondary and our elementary runs are running together. If we decide to bring a late bus in that overlaps either one of those,
I see.
it would be 200. If we can go our late bus later than the second elementary run, the price will drop.
Oh, really? So
Yes.
then we could do that. It will be, but still won't be included in the,
These are informational costs, so these are not included in the bid.
okay.
These are just informational costs. We do not have to use First Student for our
For our late bus, we don't have to?
We don't have to.
Okay.
We could use
Well,
anybody.
this sounds like a reasonable cost, $200. And what about the athletic bus? Do we use our First Student? Did we use that for them?
You would have to talk to Mr. Donahue to see what percentage he uses First Student, but I know he uses First Student. He's used Conley. He used Southeast Regional. He's used several,
Oh, okay.
depending on who has vehicles and drivers available.
Okay, and then the next question, I was comparing these numbers to our the recent budget we just voted on. And I made a printout. Oh, here it is.
Excuse me.
So for regular ed, we budgeted contracted pupil transportation includes drivers, $388,000. So this one is about 600. So we are,
The budget that I have does not include in-town special ed, so that includes.
yeah, I'm looking at the one without the in-town special ed.
But the bid you're looking at does include in-town special ed.
It does. So normally you would report that as a special education transportation. We got 1.3.
Transportation item in my budget is just for the regular day transportation, for 7 buses. The rest of the vehicles are in the special ed budget,
That would be 4.
correct? So we may, even still with those 2 combined, we still may be a little short, but that's where, if you combine the 2, you're much closer to what.
Okay. But when are we going to get our special education bids? I heard you just sent them out yesterday.
We just sent them out, correct?
And this year you were looking for like a sealed bid and
Yes. Are we talking about special ed transportation
Yeah.
or regular ed transportation?
I'm talking about the recent package that went out for special ed transportation
Okay,
for the fixed costs.
yeah.
What is the question?
Is there a question in there, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand. So, see, this one said regular school transportation and $600,000, and I'm concerned that 388 was budgeted, but
Can I-
you
can I-
told me that that part of it is,
Do you wanna
includes the
explain, or should I?
special ed, so that's why
Are we
we
talking
can.
about a bid, or are we talking about budgets?
Budget.
Two different
Budgets
things.
and bids are
Yeah,
two separate
yeah.
things.
Different
Yeah.
things here.
Bidding one thing, we're budgeting something totally different, Dr. Rell.
Let me explain where I'm.
No, you listen to me for a second.
I heard you.
No, you didn't.
I heard you.
We budget different than we bid.
Yeah.
I understand that.
The
Good
budget
question.
has two different sections for this bid, which I explained just a minute ago. So special ed has part of it, and I have part of it. If you
Right.
combine the two, it is
Yes,
very
yes.
close to this number.
Okay. So what the question I was leading up to is, do we need to adjust our budget? And you guys are telling me that we don't need to.
There are other factors, I'm going to speculate, that fall into the budget realm, such as the pay and ride, the reimbursement for free and reduced, that aren't reflected in our budget because we are not in fact budgeting for those. So you're not going to see a dollar for dollar comparison. But we are here to approve a bid, so if there's any other questions on the bid package tonight,
No more questions.
somebody have a motion?
Make a motion, we accept the recommendation of the superintendent regarding the...
Well, actually, we have to have a recommendation of the superintendent.
I am
sorry.
recommending that we accept this bid from First Student, with whom we've had a successful relationship for the last 12 years or so.
I will now
Thank you.
make a motion to accept the recommendation of the school superintendent regarding the transportation.
I second it.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Harding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rolling.
Yeah. Next on the agenda.
And the next item is something that's been under discussion for the last few weeks, which is next year's calendar.
Yeah, we are striking the school curriculum update.
I'm sorry, yes, we are striking the school curriculum update because it was related to the potential change in schedule and the master scheduling process at the high school. And because of the ongoing negotiations with the STA, it has been recommended to us by our attorney that that not be something that be discussed this evening.
Okay. So we are going on to the proposed district calendar.
Yes, sorry, I just
That's
went
the-
right over that, as though you
I
were
knew
reading
that.
my
I just
mind.
wanted the
Yeah.
other members here who didn't know that to hear that.
Thank you.
On the calendar, I actually received 2 additional emails. I don't know if anybody else did as well.
I got one.
I will read these and then we can open it for discussion. But we did have it posted on the Facebook page again to solicit more input, and I have 2. And the first one is that they would recommend eliminating the 2 days off for Rosh Hashanah, as well as eliminating vacation in February and March, or February and April, and creating one in March. That's a topic for another day. I appreciate that. And the other one is, I'll read it because there's a lot of good points in it. We are writing a response to the message on the Stoughton Public Schools Facebook page soliciting feedback on the number of days off for Rosh Hashanah holiday in 2014. With all respect to all religious beliefs, we would appreciate if SPS only closed for 1 day for Rosh Hashanah. Given that any student who is out more than 1 day is given an accepted excusal, we strongly feel that there is no need for the entire district to shut down for 2 days. 2 days off, especially near the beginning of the school year, presents a very real challenge for parents who work full-time. We have just finished testing our employers' patients with altered summer camp work schedules, so having the student return to school only then to have 2 days off can put us in a very difficult position at work. Granted, there are programs like Stoughton Extended Day running on these days, but that is an additional expense, which again, coming at the heels of summer camp expenses, can be a stretch. We think it's very important for students to appreciate and respect all religious beliefs, but having 2 days off for Rosh Hashanah does nothing to add to that tolerance, as the meaning of the holiday is not taught leading up to the days off. The students, those who do not celebrate the holiday, just see it as 2 days off, and we strongly favor and support only 1 day off for the holiday. I would like, if other people had other emails, and then open it up for discussion.
You get the same emails you did.
Yeah,
So we did.
most likely. Reopening the discussion. And I know that would also let our student representative weigh in.
Yeah, maybe I'd like to hear the. Can we hear him
start with you
first?
if you'd like, yeah.
Sure. Before I begin, though, I just wanted to say that what I'm about to say is not the general consensus of the student body, in that I didn't have a chance to speak in front of the student council. That I didn't think it was appropriate to ask whether a student would like a day off.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to get much variety in the answer with that.
You can turn the microphone back towards you.
So these are just my personal opinions on the issue. And that the first one is, although my opinion is slightly biased, being Jewish, I would like to see the school committee vote to have 2 days off. It's a sacred Jewish day, and I would personally be upset if the school committee does not observe that. Another reason is that, for example, is that, what did I say? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Take your time.
If the need is so great to fit in the number of days, for example, we were talking about how this extra day off we're going to struggle to fit in the number of days into the school year before July.
For this current school year, yeah.
For example, for this current school year, is that I do see fit that if we were to eliminate the second day, that we should also push to eliminate Good Friday. And that, building off, though, also what the email said, too, that struck something, too, with me, is that I don't believe that for any of the holidays that we have off, they teach about the religious observances being taught. For example, we don't learn in school about
Separation.
No, you're correct.
and that and I know too. You said earlier to me too that another motion is that we completely secularize the school calendar, and that I know there really aren't any. For example, for Christmas, that's a federal holiday. We can't obviously get around that one. But for example, too, if we were to fully secularize it, I would push also for the 2 weeks in March too as well. I know April vacation is centered a little bit, not fully. I know it's really about Patriots Day too.
Yeah, it actually is about Patriots Day.
It's about Patriots Day. So I know I was about to say something about Easter, but I know that's not really.
It doesn't usually coincide with Easter,
I know.
actually. Yeah.
And then lastly too is that some of that point is that if the school days are really needed to fit in the school year, that we should also push to eliminate Good Friday. And then lastly, last meeting too, we talked about how it would be an excused absence even if students chose to miss school to observe.
Right.
But also, I know it's said that's excused absence, that teachers should be mindful that some students are going to be observing the Jewish holiday, but also the classroom discussion goes on.
Right.
The workload isn't the teacher assigning the workload isn't as mindful to the fact that others will be having this observance, and that I don't feel it right to put a student at a disadvantage based on a personal religious belief that they decide to choose. And thank you for your time, and I hope that you
Thank
take
you.
these comments into consideration.
And as I discussed with Mr. Potter before we sat down today, that talking about the role of the student council member here, I'm really looking, especially in topics like this that do impact the students, to kind of engage in discussion, understanding that anytime you come to the meeting, especially if we do start supplying you with a packet and the agenda, you won't have had the ability to go back and test the opinion of the students or student council in this case. But we do appreciate that the conversation can happen, so thank you for that. Other comments? I see Mr. Dolinsky.
I've mentioned in the last meeting and the meeting before that regarding the various costs involved. As a traditionalist, I'm all for the 2 days off. I'm concerned about the possibility, if we have a Jewish member of the faculty that opts to take that day off, what the cost would be for substitutes filling in for those teachers. Secondly, like Adam had mentioned, I hate to put a student behind because he took the second day off, even though the teachers have a curriculum. They have to follow. They're under a mandate to do a certain amount of time in front of the class, and everybody should be getting the same amount of education. Excused absence or not, it doesn't bode well overall. Okay? The other thing is that in light of this, and I notice, and I'll bring this up at this point because it's something that's crossed my mind, and it's been mentioned here before, that what we are trying to do as a school system is to be a first-class, world-class educational system. And looking at the calendar for this year, and there's nothing we can do basically about changing the calendar as far as I can see, because I know in the back of my mind what the vote's going to be. I would almost say somewhere along the line.
George, yeah.
Change it.
Talking about this year or next year's
Well,
calendar?
this upcoming year,
Oh,
this
yeah.
upcoming calendar.
Yeah, that's why we are here.
I personally think that I think Stoughton should be a leader. I'd like to see us eliminate the February and April vacations, establish a vacation in March, which is midday or midway. I think it's 50 some odd days between two previous vacations, and have a vacation in March and eliminate the other two vacations. Whether you all agree or not, that's something else. But at the same time, it's radical,
Yeah.
it's different, and I know I'll hear about it in an upcoming meeting somewhere along the line with the union. But I feel that we don't need both of those vacations, and I don't refreshing or getting another second wind. It doesn't hold water to me. So I'm in favor of the 2 days and eliminating the February and April vacations, and we'll go from there.
Oh, that we could only have that whole discussion now. And you know personally that I don't disagree with you on the February-April issue, but I have mentioned to several people who have emailed that I'm looking forward to having some sort of public meeting, and really I will bounce the idea off of you now. We'll deal with the schedule, but we do have a public hearing that has to happen at some point on the budget, which is one where we really do solicit the input of the public and hope that they attend. If we can, in fact, piggyback that discussion to happen at that meeting so that we have a forum for the public. Several people have responded that they want to talk about the bigger issue of, like I said, secularizing the school calendar, religious holidays in general, and the February-April vacation. So tonight's vote is on the one night for Rosh Hashanah, but that is a conversation that I would like to see if we can schedule at a night when we know we can attract a lot of people.
One other point, if I may.
Yes, sir.
In the previous discussion or the previous meeting, it was talked about the snow days. Based on my other argument or my other statements, eliminating one of those weeks of vacation increases the number of
Absolutely.
available school snow days. At the end, the kids would get out a little bit earlier because you'd have the same requirements, and at the same time, we wouldn't have to worry as much about snow days. And if that be the case, whereas school ends right now on June 25th because of 5 school days, whatever, then somewhere along the line it would end a week earlier.
Yep.
And I think which would coincide with a lot of the camps that are starting at the beginning of June, et cetera, or toward the end of June. And that would give us some latitude on school days, and that's my end of my story.
Other comments?
I just, I think I got the same 2 emails that you did. Both were suggesting that one suggesting that both days of Rosh Hashanah be eliminated, the other asking that it be reduced to 1. And I will say that attending the facility master plan meeting, one of the really important issues is that 90% of the school children in our schools have come from homes with both parents work outside the home. So, it does create a
Strain.
hardship.
Other input? Dr. Ural?
So the public hearing you're talking about will be for not this 2015 calendar,
Yeah.
but for going forward.
Right.
I don't really feel qualified on making a decision on whether Rosh Hashanah should be 1 day or 2 day.
I know.
Excuse me, George.
We could always convert you.
And sure, but I agree with George because all the schools take their February vacation at the same time. So when we want to try to go someplace,
But
the hotels are all booked
let's
up.
move the conversation
The
there, because
airplanes are
again,
so
that is a
expensive.
future conversation. Tonight's conversation is about the second day for Rosh Hashanah.
But on
so-
the let me just finish my train of thought. On the other hand, somebody pointed out that even if you eliminated the February vacation, that coincides with the President's Day, so that's usually
That's 1 day out of
you
that.
win 4 days. You only
understand.
earn 4 days.
Today's conversation and today's vote, which I'd like to move the meeting along, is on the 1 day for Rosh Hashanah. So if you have any further comment on that?
No.
Okay. Dr. Brown, do you have any?
I have no comment. I'm going to go along with the committee.
Okay. The only thing I want to add is, and I appreciate, Adam, the dilemma of having to miss a school day and miss a conversation and miss, the work. But I really want to I guess, and not to preach at you, but to talk that there are many students whose holidays aren't observed who have to face that same thing. And it is not a comfortable choice for us to make, and it's certainly something that, we take very seriously with the research that we have at hand. So with that, I would like to hear a motion.
I make a motion that we revise the school calendar to reflect the second day of Rosh Hashanah as being a day off.
Do I have a second?
We had this happen before, didn't it?
I made the motion.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to second it? Then
Then at this point, I would say, George, now you know how I feel.
Berto?
Okay. Well, with that said, I don't believe I need a motion for the one day because that is what's on the calendar.
Well, you still
So you
have to
still
vote
have
the
to-
We'll have to
calendar.
vote the calendar. Okay, so I would like
Either an alternate motion or
Yeah.
a motion to accept this proposal.
and I don't make
Wanna make
motions, people.
I made one motion. You want me to make a second one?
We have to,
All right, I'll make a motion, I said, even though I'm against it.
No.
I'll make a motion to accept the calendar as presented and go from there.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in, any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, and
I'm going to abstain
on the grounds,
on the grounds that I'm not qualified to make that decision.
you're, well, fine.
He's abstaining. That's legitimate. And I have voted negative.
Yes, I agree, that is reflected, correct, Mary?
Well,
Well, can you vote against your own motion?
Well, nobody else is making a motion. then. Everybody's going to sit here and wait for somebody.
George, that's what we call flip-flopping.
If the left side of the table doesn't make a motion, then the right side has to.
I got to tell you, it's days like this.
I'm sorry, but somebody has to do something. You got it?
Now, who seconded George's second motion?
Deborah seconded.
Deborah. So maybe Deborah should make the first
Well,
motion.
It doesn't.
On the record, if it's not a valid vote?
I believe you can vote against your own motion.
Okay.
You put something on the table for a vote.
Okay,
That doesn't mean you necessarily have to vote for it. You put it on the table for discussion.
thank you.
And I think Mr. Delinsky was a gentleman in putting it on the table for discussion.
Thank you.
Wake up the left
Oh,
side.
I know. Next on the agenda, acceptance of,
We have a donation. And this is from the Board of Alliance for Respiratory Care. And this donation is for supplying school children items needed for care while in school. And it is in the amount, excuse me, I need the. Oh, sorry, yes, $999.84. So, and this was given to us through Pat Small, our Director of Health Services. It came to her,
Thank you, Adam.
and
Thank you.
because it's a donation of more than $250, it has to be approved by you. And I would recommend that you accept this donation.
do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent.
Second.
Any discussion?
A question.
Go ahead, I'm
No,
sorry.
go ahead. I spoke of.
Mr. Dolinsky, you made the motion and you raised your hand first, you get to talk.
All right, I was just curious as to what was the procedure on this? We ordered some merchandise, and then we took the bill and sent it to this Board of Alliance for Respiratory Care, which then covered the bill? Is that what is that the way I'm interpreting this?
I'm not sure what the mechanism was that it came to us, but we haven't accepted it because we can't until you do. And I don't know that this came to us in the style of a traditional donation.
Because the way this reads, they're looking for a payment for an invoice for $999.84, and then it is with pleasure from the Board of Alliance for Respiratory Care, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, to offer this donation in supplying school children items needed for care while in school as our mission statement in helping people in need that have respiratory problems. The way I read it, that there was something ordered
Yep.
probably by Ms. Small, and then turned around and with some sort of discussion or relationship with this alliance, that they offered to pick up the cost of the bill, if that's what I'm reading.
I don't know if it was that or if it was something that we ordered from them, which they're declining payment for.
Oh.
Which is what it sounds like it is.
Yeah.
Which I think is really great of them.
And either way, I think if she's identified that there are certain agencies out there that will pay for something that would have been a normal part of our operating costs, or in fact that they're declining payment for something and creating it as a donation,
Yeah, I'm just curious as to where this, I'm just curious as to the terminology as a donation versus the covering of the bill. I mean, it's just,
well, either way,
either way,
yeah.
I'm in favor of taking the money. I mean, you know,
either way, it's a donation.
It's a donation.
Yeah.
one way or the other,
Yeah.
whether it be equipment or supplies or.
Yeah.
Very well. Dr. Earl, you had a question?
Yeah, I was also confused the same way. Since, I mean, this doesn't tell us, and from the discussion, it's evident that we don't really know what's going on here. Would it make sense to, postpone this vote until the next meeting and get the necessary information? Because it's our duty to act on this, to vote on this, and I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable voting blindly.
Dr. Brown had a comment first.
Okay, so they're giving us some money to support kids or support something where we need some services. Why are we not voting to take it? I mean, they're giving us a donation. It's a reputable company. They have a relationship with the district. What's the problem?
So is that a rhetorical question,
Yeah,
or would you like me
that's
to
not a
answer?
question, not a-
Well, let
not a-
me answer the question, because first of all, we have a legal responsibility to act on these donations. Otherwise, you could say, the money is here, why don't we take it without the school committee vote? So since the law gives us the responsibility to vote on it, it should have come to us with the proper background information so we understand what's going on. So that's my concern.
Mr. Dolinsky.
No, I happen to agree. I mean, as much as I can agree on Dr. Earl's previous statement, the fact is that if you look at this, the letter is dated January 29th. We are now at February 25th. There is a possibility of incurring late charges, et cetera, for unpaid invoices that go beyond 30 days, which is clearly coming up to. I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but at the same time, I would strongly suggest in a situation like this that we forwarded the backup information on this type of situation so we know what's going on. And I mean, I'll vote in favor of paying this, but at the same time, I'd like to see a little bit more information.
So if you'd like to craft a motion that says that, and that you would like to see the backup information, I could entertain that motion.
I just, the motion I think I've already made was to accept this donation, okay? And I believe it was seconded, if I'm not mistaken.
No, there was no motion.
I
was there?
second,
Oh, gee,
yeah.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So I would not,
Yes.
no, but for future reference.
Discussion.
And just for future
Agreed.
reference,
Agreed.
rather than making it a motion, that we be given further documentation to support what we're giving, what we have here.
It is.
That's all.
Is it? I will entertain a vote on this motion. Is it also just a general consensus will of the board to have the documentation, backup documentation forwarded to you?
I mean, that goes without saying for
Yeah.
all the school committee information.
I'd like to accept this donation, but then, at some point, just have the backup information sent to us.
Okay. So on the motion and the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Earl, your
I
vote?
oppose because I prefer to have the information and vote on it at the next
Very
meeting.
well. So 4-1. Is it possible to request
I will.
an answer?
I'll get some details
Thank
from
you.
Pat around this. It's not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda is the review of the public comment policy. I put this on here. And again, I apologize for not bringing the information about my discussion with Ms. Tate. But that aside, there are, looking back at the minutes, and we discussed this shortly after I became chair again, I believe it was an October meeting, where we brought this, which was a essentially trial, 6-month trial period that is now in its past its second year, that was never.
It's been 2 years,
It's
really?
been 2 years, but it's never been voted as a policy. I am entertaining,
Why you can't vote?
No, I can vote.
I am entertaining now any thoughts on this policy, and this could still be considered a reading and not necessarily a vote, but thoughts on this policy in terms of how people feel about going forward with it and making it no longer a trial, making it permanent, and any wording changes that they may have to the policy. So, Mr. Delinsky.
I have read this over a number of times. I've looked at it. The only concern I have really is the fact that I do not want to stifle a member of the public's being able to bring up something that could be of interest or an observation that we have not seen. As much as I respect the management of the school system, the key is that some of the people that come before us may see something differently. And I think they should be entitled to express their feelings, whether it's in the 3 minutes or less. I think this is something we could go forward with, and I'm all in favor of it. The only other point I had was in number 9, where it says responses to concerns will be made only by the superintendent, which is fine, or chair of the meeting. And then it says, or other members at the chair's discretion. I don't see that actually happening too often where any other member of this commission or board has been given the opportunity to respond to any of the statements made by a person sitting in that last chair representing the public or whatever. I do agree with the fact that we do not want to talk about individual information such as a student or personal item or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, I'm a little concerned about that last sentence. And I think if we go forward with it, either we agree that other members of the board can respond, or eliminate those last 6 or 7 words.
May I offer the cases where I have used that as
You can do
a
anything you want, Madam
Thank you.
Chairman.
And this isn't as an argument one way or the other, it's just to clarify that, in fact, when we have had public comment, and the case in particular that I'm thinking of, somebody brought up something to do with the feasibility committee. And I had Ms. Sauvanet sitting here, and it was basically the ability to straighten out a fact on the spot. Now, we do hear public comment. It is fine to not comment on public comment and to take that as advisory to go back and perhaps put on future agendas. But if something is in fact misstated or a question is asked that I know a person who participated in that process could answer, I did defer to her to answer the questions on feasibility. And that just being an example to show why that
Okay.
worked. But again, not an argument for or against.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
I had-
and yes, she did. Ms. Sauvanet, sorry.
Yes, so I did write this policy based on what other school committees around the state use. One thing that came up repeatedly in other policies that I had looked at was that is the first line on the first page, the first line of the 3rd paragraph, which is to say, public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between or among citizens and the school committee. Rather, it is intended to offer citizens an opportunity to express their opinion on issues of school committee business. So it does serve that purpose. Giving a little leeway to the chair who is in charge of making sure that the meeting remains orderly. On the 2nd page, line number 11, the 2nd paragraph, which also states, in addition to the public comment section at each meeting, the public is invited to remain for the whole meeting and may be invited to speak on any agenda issue at the discretion of the chair. Should the chair invite comments on agenda items, he or she will request that citizens in attendance who wish to speak signify as such by raising their hand. So, you know, it is meant to be, you know, a tightly, a tightly crafted policy so that we can hear from members of the public without things breaking down into inappropriate comments or discussions or even arguments between school committee members and members of the public and the school committee. At the same time, in the last 2 years, what I had envisioned for how this would work has been pretty much a disappointment, because I had been hoping that, in fact, I'd get feedback from parents, from other citizens about school committee policies, and it really just has been a couple of people over and over again, and you know, which is fine, but I had really hoped that it would be you know, that we could hear from a broader segment of the public.
Dr. Earl is next.
I think this, if you remember this correctly, this came out as a election issue. It was a strong request or you know, feeling from the public to have a public comment policy. And if you remember, selectmen also went through the same process. They had it, and then somebody decided not to have it anymore, and then they got a really strong reaction. So I think having feedback from the public, even if it's from the same person over and over again, I think it's healthy, and we are limiting it. We are not saying that, you know, they can speak for the whole meeting, they can speak for half an hour, just giving them 30 minutes. And also, I think having some latitude from the board members to respond is also not a bad idea. I mean, I'm all for having communication with the public, since we are their representatives. In terms of that part that Mr. Dolinsky had picked up, you know, the responding to the comments, I think the main concern would be violating the open meeting law, because the discussion is not posted. And if you guys remember from the open meeting law training, you know, discussing something or making statements does not break the law. It's just the process of deliberating. So maybe we can change that, give a little more latitude, and then just you know, define so that we don't do any deliberating with that process without having the item on the agenda. I think that will open up to maybe more comments, or you know, for us to learn the public opinion.
So I just wanted to add that it in fact was not an election issue of any kind. When I was chair, I had been interested in whether there in the past had been a public comment period at any of the school committees in the past. And at some point in the past, there was a public comment period. What happened is that a member of the public came forth and commented on a private matter involving their child. And it was really at that point that the public comment period went away. So I had looked at what other school committees do, and I had proposed this. I would leave number 11, because having been the one that that had the information that at that period of time, I was able to fill in the speaker on what the actual truth was.
Actually, you were against this before you were for it. It was an election. It was an election
This is
issue.
not a personal attack. This is discussion of the policy on the
that's
table.
that's what
No,
we're
we're not
discussing.
discussing the policy. There's nowhere in here that says what her opinion was of this before she did it. We are discussing the policy on the table. Mr. Dolinsky.
Based on what I've heard so far, you know, and let me just say this. The selectmen did have a public comment section at their meetings. They ran it for a while, and one of the selectmen, I don't remember who it was, decided, or the chairman decided at the time, that they would discontinue that section. There was a large furor from the general public as to taking that section or that opportunity to speak to the selectmen away, and they have reinstated that area. Based on the multitude of people that are here tonight, it's just annoying to the fact that we don't get the attendance for people that have issues that they'd like to discuss, whether it be regarding a facility, regarding a situation that affects the entire school population. They're not here. They're not here.
They are here, but you can't see them.
My eyesight is poor, but at the same time, it's not that poor. I can count the amount of empty chairs. Just to bring this to a head, I'm all in favor of the policy. I understand the responses that were made to my initial statements. I am a firm believer that we have to give the opportunity to the people that want to take the time and a few minutes to come up. It's usually at the beginning of the meeting, which is held at 7 o'clock, and it doesn't take them that long. They get 3 minutes to speak, and I would definitely go along with keeping this thing and making it a policy. And we have covered ourselves basically in Statement 11, the chair of the meeting may terminate any individual's privilege of address for inappropriate conduct or statement. That's fine. We've covered ourselves at that point, but I'm all in favor of keeping this. And I don't think I can make the motion after.
No, but
speaking about it.
well, I would like to also add my comments since we're still in the discussion part of this. Contrary to what people may believe, I am not against the public comment period. It is, in fact, something that causes me a little bit of distress at times because you do know what people are going to say. And I have been at the meeting where the person decided to speak very loudly about their child, fortunately off microphone. But it is probably every chairman's nightmare to have to deal with that type of public outburst. I do have a couple things that make this of concern to me, is that it's, I don't think, specified really well, and we have in the past excluded the public comment period from special meetings, and that is nowhere indicated in this policy. So I would like to, in the very first paragraph, the very last sentence where it says, therefore the committee has set aside a period of time at the beginning of each school committee meeting, I would like that to read at the beginning of each regular school committee meeting. I do believe that we have special meetings that are usually called because we are looking for a public hearing on a budget process or that type of thing. Where in fact we are inviting the public to come and speak, or that the special meeting has a particular topic that may take up more time. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Mr. Dolinsky, that there is nothing more frustrating about this job than the feeling that one is doing it sometimes without any input. I want to be representing the people, the parents in particular, the taxpayers of this town, and we want to give them many methods of contacting us and having public input, public comment being just one of them. I do know that it is particularly unsettling for some people to show up and be on camera and be on microphone. I think that emails are wonderful for them. I like what Mr. Ford had told us about with what had happened when he was in Hull, with a period before the meeting where 2 school committee members would be there, so it wasn't an open meeting, but the ability to be heard. Because not everybody is comfortable stating their cause on camera. I don't think it's a one or the other. I think a combination of these methods to solicit public input is ideal. But my only addition to this would be to add the word at the beginning of regular school committee meetings. Like I said, we could have the discussion on topic number 9 as to whether we want to have any responses available. I disagree, Dr. Ural, with making it a discussion because it is a 15-minute period of public comment. And if that's what we intend it to be.
Not the discussion, but responding.
But that becomes a discussion. Responding is a two-way conversation, is a discussion. But those are my thoughts. I am not putting together the motion because I am not in the position
Joyce?
to do so. Dr. Ural.
You bring up an important, I think, valid point. Some people, they don't want to be on camera. So how does the board feel by accepting public comments by email or letter, that they could just be read?
We accept them all the time.
So maybe during this public comment period, somebody can read it. If somebody, do we have that in
We
here?
do it during correspondence.
But maybe we can do it as a part of the public comment.
I guess, you know, my concern with doing that, quite honestly, is that it takes away from the time of the public comment.
Do
And if
you,
it is in fact already correspondence,
Do you read all the correspondence?
we read the correspondence
Yeah.
that, you know, there is correspondence that comes to us that is asking a specific question that is not necessarily public. It is somebody that wants an answer to something and they get their answer. I guess we would want to be able to determine whether something was of, I guess, at a personal nature where they've just asked a question versus something that they want to have publicized. And I guess that's a finer line to distinguish. I don't get a lot of emails either.
So, Madam Chair, are you looking for a motion to make this permanent or to make this for another year, or what are you looking for?
I'm looking for any motion that
Okay.
that continues so that we have it in understanding that it is a policy and that it's not this 6-month trial that's been in place for 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
And Mr. Delinsky.
All right, Madam Chairman, and so we can move this thing along, so you can go home early. I'd like to make a motion that A, we eliminate the word 6-month trial. B, that the motion include a statement somewhere, give this another year prior to secondary review. And thirdly, to insert the word regular after, and the last sentence, as you read earlier, where it said, therefore, the committee has set aside a period of time at the beginning of each regular school committee meeting to hear from the public. That's my motion.
So, George, I would like to second that motion. Can you explain what is inserted instead of 6-month trial, like for a year before we review
Give
it
it
again?
give it another
Okay.
year.
Okay.
Take it at the
Okay.
6-year, and
It'll
also I
probably
would
be 2
eliminate
years again. Okay.
Eliminate the words also, if I may, Madam Chairman, I'm sorry. Take off the word draft and second reading.
Yeah, which would not be part of a policy. That's
Right,
just, yeah.
okay. And just call it a school committee public policy, whatever, and put a time constraint as to 1 year prior to review
Okay.
again.
Can
I'd
I make
second
a
that
friendly
motion.
amendment to make it permanent?
No, I would like to second Mr. Delinsky's motion as I
Okay.
previously stated.
Because when
Now we have discussion, so we can
Yeah.
entertain a
I
friendly.
just, we have, even if you did this permanent, it will come up to.
Everything's subject to review,
Yeah,
yeah.
everything is subject to review at any time, essentially. So I don't think you need to say, with all due respect, George, one.
And I will agree with Dr. Earl on this, I think, because we're in the middle of a policy committee, you know, context ourselves, that all policies are subject to review as long as somebody wants to put them on the agenda for review, so.
Whatever, if you want to take out that part of the
Is
1
that-
year,
That's fine.
Okay.
we'll take out that part, but take off the 6-month trial.
So, any further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that an affirmative, Dr. Earl?
Yes.
Yay,
You agree with
unanimous.
me.
Voted.
Next, yeah, we voted, yay. Next on the agenda is, or are, several items from our policy subcommittee meeting of, gosh, was it last week? I forget.
Seems like we have a meeting every day.
Policies.
There's in the packet, the second page of the hiring policy did not make it to the packet, so this is a copy
Okay.
of the second page.
Oh, I didn't realize it
To
didn't make it
pass
to the print
down.
packet either, okay.
And I'm going to hand the microphone over to Mr. Ford because he's been working with the policy subcommittee.
Thank you.
And then I guess it probably makes sense to take them in order.
So, oh, thanks. We have, you haven't done, okay. Mr. Ford, how are you tonight?
Very well, thank you.
We have first the bullying policy, which has,
May I just interject something unrelated to
yes,
this particular conversation, but timely? It's a little bit past the half now, but at the half, the girls' varsity basketball team was updated. The girls just won 50-43.
wow.
Wow.
And Foxborough won, which means that the next game will be a home game here Thursday night.
Wow.
So if I was
excellent.
going to be at some meeting or other, I'm not going to be. I'll just say so now.
Wow, excellent.
Get
Thank
here early
you.
for
I was
seeding.
going to announce the score of the half,
Oh,
which I was
congratulations.
during your
Yeah,
last
wow.
conversation.
Yeah,
But then we got the final. So they were ahead at the half by 5 and won by 7.
Great.
Wow.
Okay, now
Thank you.
Just, Dr. Rizzi, just one case. Please get here early if you want to sit down and watch the game.
Yeah.
I never sit down and watch the game.
I don't sit either. I guard the wall.
Yeah,
Nobody's stolen the wall from us yet.
no.
Okay. So we are on bullying policy. Mr. Ford, if you'd like to.
So the policy that you have in front of you has just a couple minor changes based on some revisions that took place last year when the budget went through. The FY14 budget was passed by the governor. And basically what this does, it expands the bullying law to cover school staff as well. And it's something where we simply made two quick changes in our definitions. One, how we define the aggressor in our plan, as well as how we define bullying. So with those two minor modifications, which is just expand of who the law encompasses, we come into compliance with this piece that was a rider on last year's budget. One of the things I additionally did, though, is I checked some other pieces just to make sure that all the areas subject to compliance were up to date. And I did notice that this law didn't reflect some changes that we made last year in our non-discrimination law. So I updated the language for non-discrimination. And also, out of Chapter 222 of the Acts of 2012, there were changes in how we do student discipline and some components that are now required to be put in place and some restrictions that are put in place with regard to longer-term suspensions. And that's Massachusetts General Law 71, Section 37H and 3/4. So I did add that in as well as a minor revision as to the limit of authority that we put in this particular plan. So there's three components. There's the expanding the scope and sequence, which took place in the definitions. There's some update in terms of language as to who is protected against discrimination. And also there's an additional piece where we added just the 37H and 3/4 to the areas where we limit the scope and authority of this particular piece. So it's remarkably straightforward.
Great.
Are there any
Thank you.
questions?
I'd just like to make one comment on this because I know it is an issue in various areas, including pro football and everything else. It's a very comprehensive document, and it defines everything. I couldn't find anything I wanted to comment on negatively on this thing, and it is, like I said, extremely comprehensive. It covers everything, and hopefully, and the one area that I was concerned about is the fact that it's in the area of reporting bullying. That's the one area that concerns me because I always feel that somewhere along the line, somebody noticing bullying, whether it be a fellow student or a teacher or something like that, I'm always afraid of repercussions somewhere along the line. But I think you've covered everything in here, and I just urge that anybody that witnesses this, whether it be a student or a member of the faculty or the member of the staff, custodians, lunchroom workers, et cetera, be cognizant of their responsibilities and to go forward with reporting any observation of intimidation or bullying or harassment.
And this is a piece where we do annual training. We have probably about 15 different things that the principals and other various people are responsible for doing annually. And what the principals get every August is a list of different things they need to conduct training on. And then they do a sign-in sheet for all their personnel. They send them to me. And we catalog to make sure the fact that we've actually done all the training in a policy such as this or a variety of other things that we said we're going to do or we're required to do. So that piece is covered every year.
Ms. Sylvain?
So I just had a question. I really appreciate the change in definition, particularly with regard to the aggressor. The question I have is, what kind of, do the students, particularly at the high school, get any training or any of the other grades so that they know who to report to, or they know they can recognize
Well, an interesting thing is we actually have a curriculum
Harassment, yeah.
put in place from K to 8, which is second step, which encompasses all these different things. At the high school, and in fact, in every one of the school handbooks, there's a miniaturized version of this, which we embed. In the high school in particular has a version specifically for kids, and those are reviewed every year. The place where I really see this striking a note and being more fully encompassed at the high school is with the new advisory program. Because when you look at the advisory program, its purpose is to build relationships and also to address all the issues that aren't necessarily part of the curriculum, the defined academic curriculum. And this is as good an example of anything as what you would want to embed in a program like that. So you have, it's not just a question of knowing who to go to, but fully understanding what bullying is, the reason why you should report it, how it affects other people, so it's not just, something, it's bullying, it's bullying, but you understand its impact on others and potentially its impact on you. So that not only do you know how to report it, but you understand why it's important to report it. And I think our advisory program will go a long way to really proofing out a policy like this and a variety of other things that we do. So. Well, second step is a social emotional program that we actually run from K all the way to 8. And what we've done is, it's something that can be a standalone the classroom teachers do, but what we've done is integrate it with the guidance curriculum. So all of our guidance counselors actually take a part in going out to classrooms. And they do it differently at the elementary school and the middle school, but actually teaching classes with kids and talking about relationships, talking about how to talk to people, how to deal with things like bullying, peer pressure, all these different things.
Because the inoculation against bullying, both being an aggressor and a victim, comes much, much, much earlier than high school.
Second grade.
So, and one of the things we've been able to do over the years is to keep our counseling staff essentially intact, which not a lot of districts have been able to do, but we have done. And the proactive instruction around social interaction and why one shouldn't be a bully, how to respond if you're being bullied, all of those things are taught at a very early age and then reinforced in a developmentally appropriate way all the way up through 8th grade, which is, 9th grade is not the time that you start teaching people about those things. And just to say, don't do it, doesn't really address the issue. You have to teach children why the ways that they, if they're harmful to other kids, in what ways that is harmful to them. And if you see children with tendencies towards aggression, to work with them on where those things come from, why those things are, and to teach them strategies to cope that are better strategies than those. So I really think that the work begins much sooner. And then we have a way to work with kids that is now, the advisory piece kind of fills in a gap where we didn't have time to do any of those things before, and now we do. But the work that the counselors do proactively with much smaller children, I think, is really where the rubber hits the road in creating a culture that doesn't permit bullying and doesn't support it.
That's terrific. Thank you very much.
And an interesting sidebar with the way that we structured going after the second step program at the middle school is when our counselors go in, we actually then pull the grade level content area specialists together and we do data team meetings. So we've actually designed an additional program to allow our teachers to look at data on student performance to complement the second step program's implementation. So that's not directly related to this, but it's a nice sidebar of what went along with implementing this. So.
Great.
Any other questions or concerns?
I do.
Dr. Brown?
I think, and I think it'll be in the second step program, is that the most important person in the bullying episode is the bystander, because they're seeing what's going on and they choose to be an upstander by telling, or they choose to do nothing. So I think what children need to know if they're watching, or parents watching, it's not snitching. It's trying to protect and help somebody. It's trying to save somebody's life by reporting to a doubt, either your parent or to someone in the education environment.
Thank you. At this point, let me just add for not pertinent to this policy, but that all of these items brought from the policy subcommittee, well, they're all a little bit different in that this is a amendment to a policy that was already existing. So therefore, and quite honestly, I didn't list them either as first, second readings or whatever, but this is a fairly straightforward amendment. The next policy you see will be, in fact, one that is not intended to be voted on, but on this one, we'll entertain a motion as to whatever the wish of the board is. And since I really heard nothing in the form of amending the language,
Oh, my gosh.
I'm looking for a motion or
Motion to approve this, the bullying policy as corrected, amended, edited,
Updated.
updated.
A second.
any discussion on the, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain because this
Heard 'em.
policy did not get the blessing of the subcommittee.
Very well. Next one on the docket is the hiring policy. The school committee policy on hiring personnel subject to school committee approval. This is a first reading. So, Mr. Floyd.
Sure. This is actually a policy that that I asked to come to this subcommittee, and subsequently has found its way to the school committee. And I know there's been a lot of discussions regarding hiring of the personnel that are in fact hired by the school committee. There's only a select number of people within the school district, but ultimately, the school committee has to approve those hires. And what I had hoped to do is actually resolve all the ongoing issues by taking the language from the state and taking the language from the Department of Ed Advisory, which is what we used to utilize, and I would imagine until this policy is implemented, we would continue to utilize, and put in an additional component that just makes the process completely transparent. So in reading the main paragraphs, basically what you're seeing is a mash of the law itself, as well as components taken from the Department of Education Advisory, which interprets the law based on ed reform. And what I added was a specific piece here, and I would actually like to read this piece. And this piece has been put in place to make the law look, or make the hiring process completely transparent. And it says, to ensure the hiring process is transparent and reflects the identified best practices, the following requirements will be established. Number one, the superintendent will provide the committee with notification when a position requiring a committee appointment becomes open. So as soon as the superintendent realizes that we're hiring a nurse, an assistant superintendent, special education director, she will notify the school committee. Second piece is the superintendent will utilize an established written process when conducting a candidate search. The process will be subject to review by the school committee. So basically, the superintendent will notify the committee, and the superintendent will provide the committee with the process. All right, at which point the school committee can look at the process, amend the process as necessary, and that will be the process utilized by the superintendent in conducting the search. The third piece I put in was the school committee, based on a majority vote of the committee, may elect to have a member serve on a search committee for a position requiring committee approval. The committee member will participate on the hiring committee as defined by the established hiring process. So the superintendent notifies the committee, the superintendent provides the process, the school committee amends the process as they feel is necessary, and then the school committee can vote to put one or more members on that committee as defined by the process. So ultimately, you can be as involved or as uninvolved in the process of hiring one of these people as possible. And you can look at the process being utilized and say this meets our requirements, or we'd like you to do X, Y, and Z to ensure the fact that that process represents what the school committee is looking for in finding the absolute best candidate.
Mr. Dolinsky.
Having the opportunity to serve on a couple of interview situations, I am to like this paragraph, but I would like to modify it somewhat, if you don't mind, where it says the school committee, based on a majority vote of the committee, may elect to have a member, and then what I'm looking to add, or two, but not more than two, serve on a search committee for a position requiring committee approval. If it happens, I mean, sometimes it's better to have, in my opinion, more than just one. If somebody was available for whatever the situation may be, I think the two would be, and having the option of two, not having to make it mandatory, when I like the opportunity, but not more than two.
And that would be a standard practice on hiring like a high school principal or hiring an assistant superintendent or a sped director. So that would be well aligned with what our current practices are.
Sylvanie.
So the policy seems very good. I do have some objection to items 1, 2, and 3 because number one, the superintendent will provide the committee with notification. Up in the body of the policy, it already says keeping the school committee informed. So it does seem redundant. I think that the written process is just fine. Number 3, I looked at numerous hiring policies from other, a lot of school committee policies from other towns, and there's a couple things that sort of jump out at me. One is that if we keep number 3 the way it is, I would have it changed to that the may elect to have a member serve on the search committee and have that person appointed by the chair. I just want to redo one of the things that I found in several hiring policies. The benefit of board members sitting on hiring committees include board members understand the process, see the policies implemented, and have more confidence in both the process and the final decision. However, this practice also opens the door to negatives such as micromanaging. Board members may blackball a decision they don't like for what may be inappropriate reasons. If the new hire does not work out, the board cannot hold the administration responsible if the board or board member has significantly influenced the hiring decision. Local politics become much more a part of the decision when elected board members have a voice in individual hiring decisions. That comes that's from the National School Board Association that establishes best policies, best hiring policies from across the nation. I think that's sort of my comment. I would amend it that the let me see, that the that at the discretion of the chair, or the chair may elect to have a member serve on a search committee for a position requiring committee approval.
Any other comments, Dr. Earl?
I mean, we had, as you know, we had a heated discussion on this on Thursday, and so I think we spent an hour probably arguing. So I won't argue for 1 hour, but I just wanted to make several comments. One is I'm disappointed or disillusioned with this subcommittee process because we had formed a number of subcommittees, and Georgia and I are on the finance subcommittee. Was it finance?
Budget and finance.
Budget
yes.
and finance, and then we've been trying to meet before the school committee vote on the budget, and we were told you can't meet until you have the superintendent in there. So we couldn't meet. We are still trying to meet.
I'm sorry, I think you asked for one meeting, and that meeting did not work with the schedule.
Well, let me finish, and then you can respond. And then, so for this one, the chair said, we have some policies that we need to act urgently on in January, and then we also need to do the general policy review, get that started. So I agree that's a good idea. Then all of a sudden we have this policy, and came to the subcommittee. Subcommittee is Joyce and me, and then we have the superintendent as an ex officio member, and we had one more ex officio member. I forgot who was that.
High school principal.
Not high school principal. It's on that
No,
committee.
you listed on the definition of the subcommittees, the superintendent's an ex officio member on all the subcommittees.
Superintendent and
Chairman, I thought.
Yeah, school committee chair.
Yeah, well, I'm on.
So
the-
superintendent, we had 2 meetings, and superintendent didn't come to either
She
meeting.
appointed the person who does in fact work on all the policy for the schools, which is
And
the deputy
but
superintendent.
let me finish what I'm saying. And then we discussed this policy, and I will mention the salient points of the discussion in a minute. And then I was against it, Joyce was for it, and Joyce pulled rank on me and to bring this to the full committee meeting. Now the salient features, salient issues are as follows. Mr. Ford says, there has been some argument about the recent hirings. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but roughly he said, the reason for the urgency of this policy is that there has been some criticism of the recent hirings.
What?
Of the nurse.
Oh,
Well, there was a nurse. There was issues with the nurse hiring, business manager hiring, and the public relations specialist hiring. Those could have been all eliminated by just providing ample information. But anyways, it is what it is. The difference between Mr. Ford and me is that Mr. Ford is saying that, well, there's the law, the current law on hiring different positions, school committee positions. And there is also Department of Education advisory that was issued in 1995. So that's just after the education reform, the education law reform, and then it was said that for now, you use these practices. In due time, the future legislation may clarify the statutes. But the statutes didn't change. So Mr. Ford would like to take the 1995 advisory to modify the effect of the law as it is written in the books. Let me finish, Mr. Ford.
Of course.
So that's why I disagree with it. I disagree with the urgency. And so this is taking away the authority from the school committee. And I also tried to do some research, look at the MASC model policies. And I didn't see anything like that in MASC model policies. So my colleague, Ms. Sauvigny, said she has found some policies, so I don't know what they were. So I'm really interested in if you don't mind sharing them with me, I'll really appreciate that.
Sure.
And we'll discuss that.
May I just?
Is it
Of
okay for her
course.
to offer? Thank you.
I just want to say it was so easy to do. I just put in Massachusetts School Committee hiring policy, and like 75 or 100 came up.
Okay,
So,
maybe I didn't do that.
you can do that yourself, or I can send you what I found. But that's what I did, and I looked at town after town after town. I looked at. I tended to look at towns with high-performing school districts because I thought that would be a good model as opposed to low-performing school districts. But that's all it involved.
So the point is, the law is clear on how the hiring should be. Why should we modify it? I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Sandy,
Mr.
could I-
Ford. Go ahead.
Mr. Ford.
Let me just first of all, as to why I feel this is urgent, because I believe this is something we need to take care of before we enter the next hiring season. Because I believe it's a poor reflection on the school committee and the Stoughton Public Schools themselves when we have a discussion regarding hiring when we have, in fact, great hiring practices. And I think we unduly discredit ourselves by having this discussion in public in the manner in which it's taken place.
I agree.
And I would like to take this off the table so people can focus on what's really important, which is educating kids as opposed to whatever protocol was or wasn't followed. And we go back to the district review. One of the strengths of the district review was we have great hiring procedures, and I've gone to great pains to try to demonstrate that fact. another piece about this is the advisories that came out in 1995 reflect the Department of Ed's attempting for people to understand how to interpret existing laws based on ed reform. Because ed reform didn't clarify them per se explicitly, but there was a definite spirit to ed reform. And what they attempted to do is say, based on ed reform, this is how we believe you should interpret these laws. We don't contradict the laws. We don't violate the laws. We haven't rewritten the laws. But we have interpreted them in the spirit of a reform which fundamentally changed how we conduct business and education in Massachusetts. And when you see the policy that you have, we haven't broken any law, but what we've done is we put a specific expectation that's easy for people to interpret and understand, so that there's no question as to how we're interpreting the law in through the lens of the advisory. So basically, what we've done is we've taken a law that exists, we've looked at advisory, and we've clearly put in writing as to how we're going to implement that law in this school district. In doing so, we alleviate a lot of the issues that we've seen in the past, so that we're not putting in time and effort debating something which, to be honest, shouldn't be an issue of debate in a school committee meeting. And the other thing that we've done is, if there are concerns about transparency or the process that we utilize, let's just put it on the table. There it is. And if there's any questions or concerns, there's just a well-documented, drawn-out process to go after those concerns, so that we can then refocus our time on things which I believe are more important than this. And we cannot, in open session, have an argument or discussion or have things which I think discredit the public schools. And I believe the public has to have confidence in what we do. And I don't believe in the past some of the discussions that have related to this specific area of what we do have helped to strengthen the public's confidence in the fact that we're doing a good job. So I would like to see this policy go in place before we enter our next hiring season. I believe this is something which is incredibly timely, so that we're not undermining people's confidence in what we're doing, but in fact we can point to utter transparency in what we're doing, so that everybody knows what we're doing and how we're doing it. We're not breaking any law, but we're simply explicitly putting out what the law is through the lens of the Department of Ed in interpreting ed reform. So I believe this is an important piece. I think for the school committee, this is my personal opinion, it would help the school committee move forward in the future. I don't think this is in any way bad for relationships. I think this can only help it strengthen relationships. And I believe in the end we have a completely transparent process, so that everybody knows what we're doing, how we're doing it, and it gives the committee an opportunity to have feedback on the process and participate in the process itself if you so desire. So I believe I think this is a good policy, and I'd like to see it come to fruition.
I would like to let Dr. Earl finish, because
Yes.
you allowed Mr. Ford
Thank
to.
you, Mr. Ford. You said you feel this is urgent because the next hiring season is coming up. The hiring season for what?
For all of our employees. We work on
But
a
this
cycle.
policy doesn't really apply to all our employees. It just applies to assistant superintendent, applies to school nurse, applies to business manager. I forgot what the attendance person.
So, but Dr.
So
Earl,
it doesn't apply to teachers,
you
because
don't.
it doesn't apply to principals.
Dr. Earl, you're not in a position to know the positions that we may be opening next year. And I have more information in that regard than you do. And I'm not going to comment specifically on what employee has done X, Y, and Z, because that's not part of the purview of the school committee at this point. But if we have potentially positions coming open, and whether we do or not, we may. A school nurse runs on a teacher's contract, which is the same recycle for non-renewal or retirement. And if we in fact have a school nurse that's not coming back next year, that position could potentially be coming up next month. So we need to get the process in place so that we can get the best candidate pool possible. And if it's a non-renewal of a contract, so we can provide notice as soon as possible to that person, so that this process can run its course and everything is done just consistent with what we do for everyone else. One of the things that we do very well is we're remarkably consistent in how we handle things year to year between the different between hiring process for elementary school teachers, for middle school teachers, for high school teachers, for administrators. Similar process, we run similar timelines. And that window for hiring is opening very soon. And we too tend to go out early because you know what? If you advertise in March, you're going to get a better candidate than if you're advertising in June or July. I mean, you can get a much better pool of candidates the earlier that you go out. So this is in fact timely. And this is something that we need, and this, you know, this is just something that needs to get done. It needs to get put to rest so we can move on.
So I meant, we're not going to fire all school nurses and hire, so it's not really a season. There may be one or two incidences, but so I think saying that the hiring season is open is going to be open is not really a valid point in my view. Let me finish. You said public has to have the confidence in the process. I 100% agree. Having the public confidence in the process starts with having all the school committee members have confidence in the process. And that starts with providing all the requested information, not saying, you know, taking a vote and the school committee saying this school committee member doesn't need this information he's asking for.
So,
And then I also wanted to, you said this is doing the law. It is incorrect. The law, for example, in your draft, you talk about the deputy superintendent. I searched the law, and I couldn't find anything about the deputy superintendent. I don't know why we have a deputy superintendent, but the law talks about assistant or associate superintendent.
It's the title that we happen to have for Mr. Ford. So I would imagine that's why you included the language, since you fall under that provision of the hiring,
exactly.
to cover our title.
And when you look at titles, I mean, you're looking at titles, they're defined a number of different ways in the system. By your EPINS code, by how you're coded in the retirement system. If it's not a perfect fit, you can revise it within your own policies, just as people are allowed to make an educated adjustment within the different systems that support us implementing education. It doesn't have to be a perfect fit, but if the job description fits it, you can amend language within your own policy to address the nomenclature which you choose to use within your own school district.
Are you done with your concerns, Dr. Earl?
So again, you know, going on this issue of having the public confidence, that's starting with the school committee members, because we are the representatives of the public. And if the public is not happy with our performance, they will not elect us, then you'll have a new school committee members. It starts with the school committee members, and as long as, I mean, this policy, I can see that it will not make me satisfied, because I'm not looking to control everything. I'm just looking to get the information, all the background information, so that I could vote with a clear conscience. That's all I'm looking for, and this doesn't provide that to me.
But Dr. Elf, if I could.
Would you like, Dr. Brown?
Can I support him and help you out down here? Okay, as an educator in a large school district, we all went to Prop.org in January, which defines who are we going to be hiring for next year. We already know who we're hiring. We know who's leaving. This is the season for hiring. I'm hiring right now at my school because we went to the Prop.org to find out what money we have, what are we cutting, what are we adding to the budget, and especially trying to attract the best candidates. We don't want to demean or discourage any of the best candidates by them watching this right now, number one. Number two, we had a candidate in here who was very discouraged, which I didn't like as an educator, because of a conversation you had, and we'll talk about it behind closed doors. I don't display
You
public.
can't talk
You
about it behind closed
public. You'll
doors.
talk about it privately, just the two of you.
The two of us talk public. So I believe I have to support him in saying this is the hiring season to get the best candidates in March.
But you said,
Anything after that, it's my turn, please. Anything after that, you're going to be getting candidates that are that are not what you would want. I'll put it that way, because all candidates are good. So this is hiring season for school districts right now. It started in January for hiring for September. So I have to agree with you.
so you said the hiring stuff season begins in January, so this is too late for that cycle.
Yeah.
You
But,
Please stop arguing semantics. She's said her point, and Mr. Ford,
May I
please.
make one last just comment to Dr. Earl? Dr. Earl, the reason I put this policy together was to give you what you're looking for. And we can agree or disagree whether I'm giving you a policy that meets your requirements. But I can say wholeheartedly that in looking at the whole thing, and based on we had one conversation about this after the first subcommittee meeting, at length conversation. But I believe this meets what you're looking for. Now, when we look at all the other issues, and we can talk about transparency, lack of transparency, or you getting what you want, you know, what this does is this defines the fact that you're going to get the information you want as a school committee policy, which is the role of the school committee. And the role of the school committee is not for any one person to want something and get something, but it's as an aggregate to act as a body, and that body define what their expectations are. So this is a nice step forward, I think, in defining a set of expectations that get you the information, which I believe will provide you with the information that you and everybody else in the school committee needs to make an informed decision as to the person we're hiring. This same process can define the other things which you're looking for, and define what the school committee wants and what information that they're going to be provided on a variety of different issues. But what this represents is not what an individual wants, but a piece that informs everyone, and it's a policy that's the will of the committee as a whole, which defines how we do our jobs and how the superintendent or myself, whoever's bringing a candidate forward, interacts with the committee. It defines our role in providing you with the best candidate possible, and it defines a set of expectations for the superintendent or myself or whoever it might be to meet. And I think for a lot of the issues that we have that come before the committee, which perhaps look contentious, they could all be addressed by developing a policy that defines a set of expectations, as opposed to different people having different expectations. So, you know, I think this is a good model for moving forward on this particular issue. If it's a model you'd like to replicate for dealing with other issues or other concerns, I think it's a nice place to start. And I would hope that the committee would endorse a policy like this so we can just move forward on this issue, get a policy in place, and so we can just continue to do our jobs in an air of utter transparency in terms of what we do, with a clear set of expectations for how to move this forward.
Right. Let me answer Mr. Ford's couple of short answer. You said this policy addresses my concerns, and I say it doesn't. So maybe you know me better than I do, but I disagree with that. And also, let me give you a tip. What I'm looking for. You know, some people can make decisions with a very limited amount of information. I'm a scientist. I need all the information. I'm not saying I should be a part of the process. I'm just saying, like this, you know, this donation we had today. I can't make that decision because I don't, you know, somebody trusted me to do a job, and I don't have incomplete information. If there is a good reason for having incomplete information, I'll understand it. So just, you know, give me the information, and I won't interfere with the process. I mean, that's a general tip to both of you guys.
Okay. So Dr. Earl, one last piece.
Okay, then I'll have one last answer.
We have other people who
promise I'll
to
stop.
speak, including myself.
Is I did provide you with a couple of our complete hiring procedures. And if you did look at them, it could define from one position to the next what information comes forward and what information is made available to people. In what we gave you here, where you established the process, that process could include the dissemination of whatever knowledge you're looking for. So moving forward as a school committee or an individual member of the school committee, you can participate in this process by saying, I'd like to have this piece put in, which provides all members with information at a certain point. So you have the capacity. And when I said, I didn't say, I know you, I'm saying what I believe. I think,
Josh, we're having a breakthrough here. Let's, let me again say, you know, what I'm trying to, maybe try to say a different way so that we understand. I'm not trying to control the process. I'm just trying, you know, like if I need a piece of information, like there were 3 applicants and I want to see their resumes, I should be able to see it. I don't need the school committee to tell me that I don't need to see it. I don't need the superintendent to tell me that I don't need to see it. That's really simple. It's really simple to keep me happy.
And I think a process defines that for everybody, and not just for yourself, but for all committees going forward.
Yeah, some people do it, some people don't.
But here's the thing. Putting a process in place that allows the committee to define that means that not only do you not have to worry about it, it means that future people who sit here don't have to worry about that as long as there's a policy, and that's really what I hear being done. I want to give the other people who haven't had a chance to weigh in, Mr. Dolinsky, a chance to speak.
Thank you. I made a motion earlier
First-
regarding,
okay.
No,
or I made
there
a
is no mo-
statement.
Yeah.
Excuse me, not a motion.
There are
I
no
made a rec-
motions on this.
I made a recommendation on section 3. Just want to add, if we do accept what I had said earlier, I would suggest that the first word in the third sentence in paragraph 3, that in parenthesis S be included on that. And secondly, having had the opportunity to participate on a couple of hiring type or interview committees, I found the situation very rewarding. I found it very interesting, was able to look at the presentation that was given by the proponent for the position. As an example, if I was hiring somebody that had an expertise possibly of Dr. Erdem's field, I would rather him sit in that meeting than I, because he knows maybe explosives or whatever the case may be.
Hey.
And he would be the one that knows more about it and would be able to offer a lot of input. And with his recommendation, along with the other members of the committee who had been selected based on some knowledge of that situation, then I would respect the candidate coming forward and being the final recommendation. We've done that. We did it on the high school superintendent, the high school principal. We did it on the business manager. We had some people involved, either directly or indirectly, or however it was done, on a public relations person. They sieved through or looked through a number of resumes and made a decision as to the qualities or what they were concerned about. And I feel that we're belaboring this point. We're going to go on and on. I don't want to sit here and have to look at 6 different applications or 9 different applications of people that are not germane to the position that we've hired in. In one situation, we had somebody send us a cover letter looking for a position in the school department that didn't know what town he was applying to, and it was obvious in the letter, if this was the type of work, excuse me, that he was submitting, that I didn't need him or her or whatever the case may be to go any further. We looked at all the candidates. We looked at everything that was presented. We listened to what the person had to say. And we made a decision on somebody, and it was a consensus of not just me or the superintendent. And the superintendent listened to what 7, 6, 7, 8, 9 different people had to say, and we all sort of agreed that this was the person that we wanted to put forward to the committee. Don't want to waste time looking at 17 different resumes for one position. We're going to have a committee that's going to weed through all this and do all the interviewing. I just don't want to go any further with this. I'm sorry.
Well, and this is a first reading, and this is a chance to have this discussion, so it's, I think, beneficial. Ms.
For the
Sauvanet.
next meeting, maybe we could just play the tape.
Ms. Sauvanet.
Just to make it perfectly clear, for the hirings that we've been responsible for, we have in fact been following the Department of Education guidelines. I just wanted to state that. As for the policy as written, if people want to leave item 1, number 1, the way it is, that's fine. But I would change number 3 to include Mr. Delinsky's change, but change the wording to the school committee may elect to have 1 or more members serve on a search committee for a position requiring committee approval. The members may be selected by the school committee chair. The committee member or members will participate on the hiring committee as defined by the established hiring practice. So that would be my change.
Okay, let me just make my one comment, and then we can talk about the process to take this forward. I've sat and listened to it all. I'm not going to add things that have already been said. I do want to say that it wasn't a very contentious discussion that we had in our subcommittee meeting. The point where Dr. Ural and I don't see eye to eye is that he says the law is clear. I say the law is clear, but it is clear that we have the authority to hire a superintendent and to appoint other positions, and that just within the definition of those 2 words lies the difference between how he in
Would you
fact
say
is
that again?
interpreting.
Would you say that again?
Because we have the responsibility to hire a superintendent, and the other positions referred to as appointments. in the law. So I am looking at the difference between that, where you are seeing it both very much the same. Not saying that's not part of what we're discussing here. I did pull rank. I did ask this to be put on the agenda for tonight. I felt that this was bundled with all the other.
You feel terrible you pulled
I
rank?
do not feel terrible at pulled rank. It's when you have 2 members voting and it's 1-to-1, and you know, again, I appreciate Mr. Ford's timeliness, or his suggestion that this is timely. If we had bundled it with the other MASC policies, it could well be a year before we got to this policy. So I have it here
MASC doesn't have policies.
I have it for first reading. I have some suggested comments. We can have input on just those comments at this point, so we can bring it forward to the next school committee meeting for a second reading. Ms. Sauvanet had made points really just on number 3 at this point.
Yeah, I throw in the towel on number 1, and I agree with Mr. Delinsky's change. I would just change it to the members will be selected by the school committee chair. So I would like to add that sentence. I would take out the phrase based on a majority vote of the committee and add a second sentence, the members will be selected by the school committee chair.
Is there discussion on that comment, and can we agree that that is something we'd like to see in the second reading?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Earl?
Doesn't matter to me. I don't think this is needed.
Okay, well, we have, if we want to do a motion and a vote, I see 4 people who say that that is an agreeable amendment to item number 3, and I'm fine with that going in for a second reading at the next meeting. Moving on.
Okay.
That wasn't too bad, was
No,
it?
No,
actually,
only
on there's nothing for the next item on the list is the model policies of the MASC. and
Actually, you did include something in. Didn't
Did
you
I?
include that?
I don't think I included that in the packet because.
Actually, George was looking for it, so let
No,
me give my copy to
the
George.
discussion on the model policies is simply a cost that may be incurred. This was nothing to do with the process that we're going to follow.
No. He was. Remember when we did the minutes last time? He said I distributed that sheet to everybody in November meeting or October. You said you couldn't find your
I
copy,
don't
so I'll
recall
give
that
you.
conversation, but you
No,
can
we-
certainly, you
gotta
can
be honest,
certainly
I don't
supply
recall.
that to him. The conversation on the table is that one of the processes that we need to go through in our subcommittee is to look at the MASC model policies, which are available online.
Yes.
To view online. They are not, however, available to download and edit.
Right, you have to pay for them.
You have to pay for them. The cost of doing so is $500.
$500.
We also talked at the meeting about the potential of using, I'll let Mr. Ford express how you had chosen some additional help.
Well, yeah, I was talking about hiring either a secretary, part-time secretary, or somebody to come in and just do contract work to pull over the model policies,
Right.
or to initially do an inventory of what we currently have,
That was it,
and then take our policies and apply the nomenclature
right?
of the MASC handbook, so that we can actually put the 2 side by side.
And you wanted to cross-reference those too.
We
so,
wanted to cross-reference.
Exactly.
And we felt that it was important to bring to this committee the fact that we would be potentially incurring some costs that would come out of someplace. And I have not, since this policy subcommittee meeting happened and it was vacation week and Dr. Rizzi wasn't available, I haven't had the chance to have that discussion with her. So again, this is just a discussion at the table, not for resolution necessarily tonight. But we would need to take a look at the budget and see where in the school committee budget line item we might be able to apply some money towards the purchase of the MASC model policies in a PDF or Word form, and then maybe the ability to do some hiring to align the policies. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, and you don't have to come up with a definitive
Well,
answer.
it's very difficult in the middle of the year to come up with money for an unplanned hiring if there is no new money in sight.
I don't
But
think
we
we're
can
looking
have
at a
that
hiring per se,
conversation.
but a use of
Yes. A stipended position to accomplish a specific task.
yes.
We could certainly have a look at that. I'm not at all prepared to say that there is money available for such
Totally
a thing.
understood. Totally understood. But I did want the committee to know that that was a possibility. and that we will have the opportunity to maybe look at that a little bit more definitively as to what kind of money we might be talking about. Ms. Sylvanay.
I think that sounds like a great idea. And just for the committee's information, when I did my survey on the hiring policies and looked at what many of the school committees have, it's remarkable how many actually do use the model MASC policies. So I think that that's a really good idea. I would like to know what the potential cost would be, but this has been such a long time in coming, and every school that I looked for has their policy manual on their website, which is exactly what we should have too. You know, an entire manual that covers everything. So I think that this would be money really well spent.
So we will continue to pursue what those costs will be. And sorry for springing that on you, but enough for an answer. Last item on the policy is one that Dr. Earle brought up, not as necessarily a policy, but it seemed to, I guess, segue well into that.
Let me explain to you what my point was. Maybe then you can add your point, Joyce. We have in the town charter, there are several sections that deal with school committee roles and responsibilities, as well as procedures. And in fact, remember, everybody was looking for where that thing on the agenda. At the bottom of our agenda, we have a saying that if you want a hearing, it has to be you have to give 24-hour notice. We couldn't find out where it was coming from. It's actually, we found that in the town charter. But anyways, so we need to look at the town charter, and because there are a lot of things that are no longer applicable or wrong, for our current operation. So we need to update it, and I put some examples on that page you have in front of you. And I also thought, this could be a good way of, see if we can change that December 31st deadline for our budget, because if we have a lot of changes to make, we could also put that in there. And Joyce felt that that was written in the law, the 31st, and I searched the law, I couldn't find it.
I haven't had a chance to go back and search it.
So I couldn't find it, but maybe we can ask our lawyer,
Sure.
see if there is something like that, because that way, if we could delay it for a couple of months, that would buy us, maybe we'll get more information on the revenue side, and we'll have do a more accurate budget.
So you weren't talking about that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, did you not mean this law?
No, I meant, I recall seeing it
State law?
in the state law that the school committee shall have
Yeah,
their
I
budget.
searched the state law for like a December 31st or written out different ways, and I couldn't find it.
I start to mix up all the legal
Yeah, me
stuff
too.
that I read after
Me
a while.
too. Too many laws.
I will look for it as well.
So the question is, I felt this could be done within the subcommittee, and Joyce felt that maybe doing another ad hoc committee or task group to work on this. So I think that's what she's going to ask.
Well, and let me follow up with that, because I guess I can go either way. I think the policy subcommittee's got a lot of work ahead of them. One of my concerns in putting this through, I guess with the same urgency as policies which need to be addressed, is my probably lack of understanding of when state law trumps charter.
Oh, it
always does.
It always
So the
does.
fact that there are these things in charter, to me, aren't as big a concern if there is a state law, in fact, that overrides it. In some cases that may apply, in some cases it may not.
Right.
But I do think it's another investment in time. And what I would like to add to that is just in listening to the brief few minutes I got to listen to the selectmen's debate that was being televised in a rerun this evening, was that the current chair of the selectmen said that they brought up the whole charter review, and that there is the town manager and town council has taken on identifying those areas within the town charter that need to be revised. And maybe it is of importance to us to perhaps approach them
Yes.
through either some designee through the superintendent, through a designee of this committee, or through whatever process that can be decided, so that if it's in fact happening at this time, we do approach it in a timely manner.
It may make sense to delete everything from the town charter in terms of the school committee operation.
Good luck
And
with that.
then I think they may agree to it, because if you look at the examples here, they're so outdated, no longer applicable. And on the issue of 31st of December for submitting school budget, I talked to a few selectmen, and because they don't really do anything other than passing it
Right.
on to finance committee, and they said they need it because it's in the charter.
Right.
So if we could change the charter to the latest possible date, that would help the us and the future school committees and future superintendents.
It's funny that one of the suggestions that they had is that they thought they were required to submit their budget too early, and that they were looking to change that as well. But theirs was in fact due to the fact that the state keeps pushing back.
Yes,
the
and
revenue
they're
numbers.
releasing the information, right?
Ms. Sauvanet, you had a comment.
I think you covered it, just to say that there is a standing charter review committee in town, and I think that they would be the best ones to kind of work through. But if the town manager is in fact taking something like that on, it seems appropriate for the superintendent, who sees him on a regular basis, to mention this to him.
Mr. Jelinski.
If I'm not mistaken, I watched that same program, and I think it was not that the town manager is doing it. He's assigned or has asked the legal counsel to review it, and come up with suggestions, not that he's involved with it directly.
Well,
Yeah,
and-
their legal counsel would not necessarily be familiar with the school committee
Right. Oh, I agree.
operational
That's a
procedure,
total-
I
so
agree.
we have to get in the loop.
And I think it is important for us to get in the loop. I think the question at this point is probably just how the comment that was made, though, is that there's a standing charter review committee, but there haven't been amendments to the charter since 1970 something. So I guess it would be my suggestion that we at least start the conversation by having Dr. Rizzi talk to the town manager, since it is his directive at which somebody is doing this research, and see if our concerns in terms of school committee or school issues in the charter are being addressed. And that if he would like us to come up with a list, then we could come up with some sort of mechanism by which we could address those, whether it be the policy subcommittee or another shoot of that. Seeing that this is kind of a one-time thing, I didn't really want to
Well,
put it on the...
I think, I suspect that they will not resist us deleting the school committee operation things, because since we maintain our own bylaws and our own policies, I don't think they would object to removing it from the code book. The biggest contention will be the first item in here, the deadline for submitting the budget. And I think as long as they are doing the changes and they are all reasonable people, they'll probably be willing to listen to us.
You do realize this does go to town meeting for a vote.
Yeah, but
Okay.
the town meeting wouldn't object to it either, because then we'll be giving them a budget that's more in tune with what the revenue is available.
I like your optimism. Mr. Delansky.
It's just one thing. I was just looking at this, and I won't belabor the point,
Yeah.
but on number 311.25, it says that we're supposed to meet on the first and third Tuesdays.
Correct,
of the
which is
month.
why this is
And
pointed out.
And we meet on the second and fourth, and the selectmen meet on
Yeah.
the first and third.
I know.
So somewhere along the line.
So this is
and then
going back to 70s.
This is 1776,
Right.
just before you came here. And then 311.34 gives you an order of sequence of what we do and we don't do. So,
Right.
I mean, here again, and you're right, this information has to be updated. Let's move on.
Well, and
Great
at that, I would like to ask Dr. Rizzi to talk to the town manager about what, I guess, the appropriate mechanism would be for our input into the process that he has already started,
The charter change process.
charter change process.
If he could look at the charter and then make some suggestions that we could look at, that would be great.
Actually, I would recommend that for the all school committee members who have some time, because these are just the examples I picked. There is a lot more in there. I haven't done it. I haven't gone through the whole thing.
We've read the charter in a couple of years. Moving on, because we are...
This is the code book, not the charter.
Oh, code, correct, stand corrected. They are on the same tab on the webpage, however. I'm striking the superintendent evaluation format, since I have not had the opportunity, again, given that it was vacation week, to meet with Dr. Rizzi, but it should be available very, very soon. We have one, we just need to discuss it. Old business. I'm going to go through facilities and wellness very quickly in saying that we have not met. A feasibility study update.
Well, the feasibility study committee did meet last night. Maureen Dougherty, our procurement officer, met with us. She has an extensive background in school building in both Mansfield and Sharon, so she kind of filled us in on the process. I'm going to ask Dr. Rizzi if you wouldn't mind kind of filling us in on where we are with regard to the long list of items that we need to get done for our application for the feasibility study. Oh, sorry. Well, we do want to head towards a feasibility study, but we need to get the prerequisites done. So where are we on the prerequisites?
We're ahead of the deadline. It's
Okay.
very prescripted what you have to do in the 270 days. It's not particularly difficult. The first thing that had to be done is in. It was 18 days ahead of the deadline. We're in conversation with the MSBA. There are a few forms to fill out. I think it's not going to be that difficult. The young woman who's our liaison is going to be helping us manage this project said the most difficult piece is getting the feasibility study money voted. And in 270 days that can be a challenge to some communities, and since that's already done, the other things are essentially form filling out, which is not going to be particularly difficult to do. So the big hurdle was accomplished over a year ago when town meeting voted for the feasibility study money. So our conversation was relatively brief. I think a lot of the conversations focus on that aspect if people haven't done it, and we have done that.
And just to add, I know that 2 of the 6 items are based on, one's an early enrollment projection, one's a definitive certified enrollment projection, that those are well already underway and handled in-house.
Well, we already know this information.
Right.
It's just a matter of putting it on their form. We
form,
don't
exactly.
need to create a lot of things for them. We just need to take the information we have and put them in the forms that they want them.
Exactly. And Mr. Delinsky, you have a comment?
I just wanted to finish, and then so the other piece that needs to be done, and this needs to be done by April 3rd, is the formation of a school building committee. So the school building committee roles are very proscribed. There's kind of a list. There isn't much wiggle room. The MSBA needs to approve of the list. One of the main areas where citizens can participate is if they have a construction, engineering, architectural background. They may send a letter and a resume to the town manager. Because it is in fact the town that builds the school as a whole. So the
Excuse me.
And given the MSBA rules and our town charter, the town manager will be handling, and the Board of Selectmen will be handling the process. So I think that's all the updates. It certainly is really exciting.
It is. And the feasibility study committee dissolved.
Yes, 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 yeah.
Last night's
We, those folks, we hadn't met in about 18 months, although we did meet regularly for about a year and a half or so before that. And the major thing that we got done was actually the passing of the feasibility article for $1 million at the town meeting in 2012. So with that done, we decided to dissolve. There are some members of the feasibility study committee that have very impressive backgrounds, and I think they may be applying for the school building committee, which will be a very time-intensive committee of a commitment of about 4 years. And who knows how often per week. It may be 1 or more times. So I think that's everything. Okay. You happened to be at the meeting as an audience. Was there anything more that?
No, likewise impressed with Ms. Doherty's experience in building projects, in
Yes,
school building
yes.
projects. I think we're in good hands, and really want to thank the members of your committee for their contributions
Yeah.
over the last 2 years. So.
Yeah.
And I know that Mr. Dolinsky had his hand up, so do you have a comment or question? That you
No, I just had a question. I was very concerned, and Deborah did mention part of it, is the committee that we need to have formed with the 270 days where getting down and down and down.
It's April 3rd.
Actually, that committee has an
The
April 3rd
committee has
deadline.
to be sworn by April 3rd.
All right, so I haven't seen anything looking for, I haven't seen any ads in the penny save, I haven't seen anything anywhere. I think we got to push this thing. I want to get this building going.
We are pushing
but,
it, yeah.
But where are we at? Have we advertised, or we just talking?
We understand, and I want to be very, very clear on this. There are several points along this process where the school committee has responsibility. There are several points at which the town has responsibility. We do not, in the case of we, have the responsibility of appointing a building committee. With that said, this is not, as I understand, a public procurement process, if you will, that you know, these committees that have been working with the along the process, along the way, have been informed and invited to submit letters. I do know that I really could put it out there, as Ms. Sauvanet did, for anybody who has that sort of expertise to, and feels like they want to contribute, understanding that the commitment is probably weekly and it is probably over several years, that it is the town manager at this point who is taking the letters and resumes, not us.
There are also very few positions that are going to be filled in that way, and people who have interest have expressed interest. The members of the committee are assigned by role, so there is no application for those things. I have to be on it. The town manager
Principal
has to be on it.
yeah.
The principal of the high school has to be on it. And the committee needs to be a size that's reasonable and not unwieldy, and 12 to 15 is the average size recommended by the MSBA. So this is not the sort of, when we started the feasibility committee, we had all the latitude in the world to have as many people in any one that we wanted. The people who are community members who don't have a role in town government, there are very, very, very limited seats. There'll be more than enough people that are interested than can fill those.
I'm just concerned that we're not pushing this enough, and that's my point.
We actually are, yeah.
Doesn't appear, based on what I've seen, it doesn't appear that it's happening. But
Yeah.
if you say it's being done, I just want to get this committee done by whenever we need it, and let's go from there.
Dr. Earl?
Just to follow up, I appreciate George's concern, and when Ms. Sauvanet says we actually are pushing it forward, who's we?
Well, I guess those interested parties who have, you know, I certainly have been working on it for 3 years. I have a lot invested in the process, and I've just made sure that I've met with people and made sure that things are getting done. But, you know, at this
When
point...
you say we, it's the royal we?
Yes, it's the royal we.
Please, not to be condescending.
I think I agree with Mr. Dolinsky's comment that it should be a transparent process of you know, informing everybody and get the best possible candidate. Now,
Well, a suggestion could be made to the town manager. Like I said, I want to be very careful at this point that the school committee doesn't appear that we're assuming responsibility or control over something that isn't ours, because this is a long process with a lot of legal requirements. And, you know, we've come this far, and I think it is really a joint effort, and it needs to be.
There's a lot of people that are invested in this at this point and that have been working on it, but it's not it's a town effort now. It's not a school committee effort.
that's why I'm saying it shouldn't be just you know, one or two person pushing it. It should be everybody pushing it. But beside the point, I have a question. Now, when we did the articles for the repair on the other you know, for the school buildings, we said the money will be under the control of the.
Facility Master Plan Committee for schools.
We didn't say facility master plan committee. We said school
Facility.
school building committee.
No, School Facility
No.
Committee.
I don't think
Yes, we did. It was a school facility committee.
so. That's that's a different committee
It's
than.
the Facility Committee for Schools. It used to be the Facility Master Plan. It's rolled in. Yes, it is a different committee.
So how was that committee formed?
That committee was formed by this body At the end of the facility master plan, it is essentially the same members that were on the facility master plan. I can't recall if we lost anyone.
Do you remember when that was?
I don't
It
recall
was
when
in
that
this
was.
very room after
sorry?
town meeting.
Yeah.
The very next meeting after town meeting accepted the facilities master plan, which by definition then dissolved the need for the joint committee, at which point the two sides of town were each responsible for forming a committee, and this committee did so.
So who keeps the minutes of that committee?
Mr. Harding does.
Okay, I'll go look at those. Thank you so much.
Okay. And standing subcommittees, we met. I really want to urge everybody here to make those appointments through Mrs. Shea for meeting dates for the remainder of the standing subcommittee so we can get them underway.
Yes, we will meet. We will try to meet. We haven't met yet, but we will.
Thank you.
So we're going to go to Ms. Shea.
So by the policies that you saw in front of you, you kind of got a summary of the policy subcommittee, other than the fact that we are going to continue on the MASC effort. Correspondence, I have none.
I have none.
Mrs. Shea, was there any correspondence that, okay. We're on to the acceptance of minutes for the regular meeting of December 17th, 2013.
Motion to accept.
Second?
Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
On the the minutes,
Motion to accept.
the special meeting of February 12th, 2014. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Motion
Second.
to approve. Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
And I have a second. I had Dr. Earl as a, would you like that to be a standing motion for the one that you said prior to?
Actually, I said that.
Okay.
That was what I was talking
And then
about.
Mr. Dolinsky seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that unanimous? Thank you. Let me go back to my main page. Other matters. Any member of the board have any other matters?
Would you like there to be any other
No, I would
matters?
prefer that we could go home.
Yes,
Dr.
I
Ruby, any other
agree.
matters?
No, nothing else to say.
Thank you. Financial warrants will be circulated in the school committee room. We do have an executive session tonight. On the agenda are the acceptance of minutes for the executive session of the joint meeting of February 12th, 2014, collective bargaining strategy for Unit A, and a grievance update, both of which fall under item number 3, which is to discuss the strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body. Our next regular meeting is March 11th, 2014. I'm Dr. Brown.
Wait,
Oh, I need a motion, sorry. A
So
motion.
made.
Second,
Second?
Dr. Brown. Ms.
Aye.
Ovene. Ms. Dolinsky.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Earl.
Aye.
An aye for myself. There will be no votes taken in executive session, so we are adjourning. Thank you.
Joe.